That's trying to figure out who she was introducing there. But yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. So what I want to do is sort of paint a picture. You're doing the hard work, right? You're at the bench, you're at the computer, you're coding, whatever you're doing for your research, and you're making discoveries that can have application outside the university. So we sometimes get kind of focused in on what does it mean in the academic world, but some of the things you're discovering or might discover in the future could solve real problems outside the academic space. And that's really sort of where Innovation Gateway tries to assist, is providing that bridge. How do we sort of take some of the discoveries, the work being done here, and maybe increase the impact outside of academia? So I want to sort of talk through some of the ways that we do that. But I want to start with a fill in the blank. This is class, right? So you got to have a question. Sending the slides will advance with it. Make it time. Get it. There we go. Try again. Okay, perfect. So University of Georgia is ranked #1 in among all U.S. universities in. You'll have to pay attention to the see if you can figure that out as we go through the process. But hopefully by the end you'll recognize the answer to that. So still not working, Travis. Where am I going here? All right. Oh, there. I just used the mouse. Yep. So before we talk about innovation,
did you mean football?
What?
You were talking about football. Right?
That was one answer. I don't think it was at the end of the stage. So Innovation Gateway, that's the group that I'm a part of. My colleague, John C, is here as well, as part of that office. And so before we dive into that, I want to kind of give you a bigger picture, because Innovation District is an initiative started out of the president's office to really move forward innovation at the University of Georgia. And there's 5 core programs that are part of the district, and each of them serves slightly different audience. So I don't know how easy it is to see the black, but you've got entrepreneurship program, which is based out of Studio 225. That's really focused on students, both undergrad and grad students. Help start business, they run competitions. There's experiential learning, which is out of the Office of Experiential Learning. That's the Student Industry Fellows Program. So that is a class that students can take to help learn about design thinking, human-centered design. And then they can apply to be part of the Industry Fellows Program, where they could be part of a student team that works on a problem that an industry partner brings to the table, right? So those are a couple options. Small Business Development, or SBDC, it's got 17 offices across the state of Georgia, 1 being in Athens. That's all about community entrepreneurs. So if you've got any kind of a business that you're trying to grow or start, it could be a restaurant, a hair salon, whatever it might be, SBDC has got resources to help. And then a relatively new office is the Office of Business Engagement. And that is really about how do we maximize sort of the collaboration between industry and the university. So that might be a company that wants to sponsor research. It might be a company that's looking to hire talent. They're looking for graduates that are coming out of the university with certain skills. It might be that they have philanthropic things that they want to do with the university that are lined up there. So it's really about how to sort of help the companies navigate the university infrastructure, which is, if you've been here any time at all, it's not really simple and straightforward from the outside to understand sort of how the academic structure works. So Innovation Gateway, that's where we're going to focus. So our role is taking discoveries that are made at the university and helping to partner with whoever invented that and find a way forward. And we'll talk about how we do that. And really it's things focused on what you developed in your role as a UGA employee. If you're a grad student, you're on a stipend, you're assigned work, that is something that we can help you with. If it's something you did at home that's not part of UGA, our office wouldn't have a direct role in that, but we're glad to talk to you and advise you and point you in the right direction. So our focus is on intellectual property generated by individuals as a part of their employment or their role at the university. So that's what we'll focus on for the most part of this talk. And I should have said, I'm going to leave time at the end for questions, but if there's something that comes up, just raise your hand, shout out, and we'll pause there. So the Innovation District, what happened is we co-located all those core programs. So you can see student entrepreneurship. This is the arch, by the way, just to give bearings. Student entrepreneurship, SBDC is on Broad Street. You've got Office of Business Engagement, it's just across the street. And then Innovation Gateway, We have offices in Terrell Hall on the first floor, and then the Delta Innovation Hub, which I'll talk more about, is really its focus of our startup programs. So there's a lot of different ways, if you think about the work you're doing at the university, that can have an impact, right? So you ideally use some of the work you do, you would like to see it have a big impact. So there's certainly many streams for that to happen through traditional academic routes. And what we want to do at Innovation Gateway is say, are there some other avenues where we can help your work have impact? And really, we don't have a job if there's not compelling research happening, the work that you're doing, right? So we're sort of a bridge. So there's nothing for us to do without the research enterprise of the university. So we understand that, and we try to complement the research cycle. So if you think about it, well, you have to have money, right? You've got to have funding to do the research. You can't really do the research without the money. Conduct the research and make a discovery, and the traditional route is to publish that in a paper. That's the impact. You're increasing the knowledge, you're advancing the field, you're adding to the breadth of understanding of a certain area. But at the same time, that discovery, that innovation might be capable of solving a problem to be applied to a problem outside the academic realm. And that's where Innovation Gateway comes in, right? We would love to have a conversation with you. Maybe you're getting ready to submit a paper for publication, or you presented at a meeting and a company's like, hey, I'm really interested in that. How do we can sort of help you think about the path forward there? And there's sort of two main streams. There's the licensing team. So that's where we focus on, can we protect this from an intellectual property perspective? Can we patent it, copyright it, trademark in some cases, and then license that technology to an existing company to develop it into a product? Or maybe it's early stage, it's sort of a nascent idea, it looks really interesting, but there's a lot of open questions. It's kind of risky. So an existing company might be, I don't know, this seems too early stage for us. And if you're interested in that, then it might be an opportunity to explore a startup company. And we have a whole startup team that focuses on helping you understand, is there a market for this? Is this really going to solve a problem that's a need in the industry, and then how you might go about commercializing that? And so hopefully when one of these two pathways is successful, you can get new products that come onto the market, new jobs created by these companies. That can lead to royalties. So when we license technology to a company and they sell products, some of that royalty comes back to the university. It not only comes back to the university, it comes back to you as an inventor. You get a share of those proceeds. When I worked in industry, if I invented something and the company sold it, I still got a paycheck, but I necessarily need to get a percentage of the proceeds. So that's something I think unique in unique in academia is that. And it's also can be a great experience, right? When you're looking about building your resume, building your curriculum vitae, going out for jobs, that sort of experience, understanding more about IP, perhaps being part of a startup company, those can be something that sets you apart from others in the field. And the other benefit it can have is new research directions. Maybe you sort of get into that field, you start talking to people in industry, you start understanding what their pain points are. That can actually lead you to sort of move in a direction that has more application to those problems. So we feel like it's complementary to what happens traditionally in an academic setting, but we're trying to provide some additional assistance and additional breadth to that. So I want to give you a couple of examples of products that have come out of the University of Georgia. Anybody heard of the Bradford assay? Biochemist in their so there was a PhD student named Marion Bradford back in the 1970s. This is one of the first products that came out of the university. So they have a long history. He was interested in how to put quantitate proteins in solution. So he developed the process to do that, but the university didn't have the bandwidth to create reagents, package those, sell those, market that, right? So we need an industry partner to do that. So about the same time he submitted a paper, he also submitted to our office. I'm not that old, I wasn't here in 1976, but somebody was, and they filed a patent, and then we licensed it out to a company that had the bandwidth to actually make these products available. I've run the Bradford assay when I was in the lab. Some of you are nodding their head. That's Marion Bradford. So he's an alum of the university, and was one of the first products that came out of UGA. Any guesses as to how many products have come out of the university based on UGA research through the years? There's no wrong answers. Just take a guess. Anybody? Yes. How many?
Would that include like any like crop lines, like any?
Yeah, plant varieties, research tools, drugs, vaccines.
73.
73. All right, we got 73 as the bid. Anybody want to go higher or lower? Yes.
264.
264. Very precise numbers here. All right.
5,000.
How many?
5,000.
5,000. Wow. Okay. 73 and 5,000. Somewhere in between. All right. So the total number is 1,150 products. Why did it go for? Let's try that again. 1,150 products. It's actually like 1,183, but we just to make it easy. And 250 companies have been founded on UGA research. And it's across the spectrum of research. So biomedical products. Anybody heard of Restasis? So Restasis is a dry eye drug. It was for a long time the only prescription drug to treat dry eye. It was discovered by a researcher in the veterinary college who was interested in canine dry eye, which can lead to blindness in dogs. And so she developed a formulation, tested it on dogs, actually tested it on UGA.
Whoa.
So you got to be pretty sure of your product before you put it in UGA's eyes. It worked well. That person developed a company to sell the vet version of it called Optimune. The other use for human was licensed to Allergan. They developed Restasis, and that was the like I said, for a long time, the only prescription drug for dry eye. I'll talk about pneuma a little bit in a moment, but Levivir is a hepatitis B drug. It was developed in college pharmacy and sold in Korea and the Philippines. We've had a number of research tools, so obviously this Bradford assay, antibodies, cell lines, plasmids, data sets, lots of different things. In the animal health company, we've got vaccines, diagnostics, the ag biotech, so lots of plant varieties. Anybody like hydrangeas? So the Endless Summer line of hydrangeas, a researcher called Mike Durr developed, he discovered a trait that would allow hydrangeas to bloom more than once a year. For a long time, they used to bloom once and that was it. So Endless Summer is a line of hydrangeas that blooms multiple times a year. At one point, 50% of all hydrangeas sold in the US were traced back to UGA genetics. Anybody heard of TIF Tough or TIF Grand or TIF Sport? So TIF stands for Tifton, which is the Tifton campus in South Georgia, where a lot of turfgrass breeding takes place. TIF Tough is a variety of turfgrass, Bermuda grass, that takes 50% or 40% less water than a standard turf. So less inputs, more environmentally friendly. It is on North Campus. If you go up to where the president's office is and the arch and all that, that quad, that's TIF Tough is planted up there. If you play golf at Reynolds Plantation, Great Waters, it's on golf courses here and all around. It's out front of the Sydney Opera House in Australia. It is on this little football field in Florida. There's a university that's kind of an orange and blue is their colors. They have a reptile as a mascot. They have TIF Tough for Bermuda grass on their football field, which I think is pretty funny, right? You got Florida Gators playing on UGA turf grass. Peanuts, the state of Georgia is the #1 producer of peanuts in the US. 95% of all the peanuts grown in the state of Georgia were developed in UGA. Higher yielding, more disease resistant. So since I'm in the informatics space, I'll talk a little bit about some software. So BioInquire was a startup that came out of CCRC. And it's really a set of bioinformatics software to help interpret mass spec data. And that company was formed, it's actually acquired, and it's, that software is now in space or in use elsewhere. Cogent Education, and I'll talk more about their story, but they were looking for ways to sort of make scientific concepts easier for students to grasp. So they spun out a company to do that based on software. Eco Green is a eco-friendly charcoal lighter. You can buy that at Home Depot, Lowe's. It's non-petroleum based charcoal lighter. So you could see, so we're between 73 and 5,000, right? 1150, but maybe, maybe you got the next one and we'll be moving over 2,000 soon. So, but it's not just about sort of commercialization and making money. That's one of the things that we hear sometimes is, oh, the university just wants to make money. What we want to do is take ideas and solve problems and find a way to help those get to people that need them the most. So this is Dr. Kisalita in engineering, and he has done a number of things sort of humanitarian focused with his service learning classes. He's from Uganda originally, and he knew that if you're a dairy farmer in Uganda, you can take the morning milking, you can go to market and sell that. But the evening milk, what do? There's no electricity, you can't preserve that milk, so you can't really save it and sell it. You're losing 50% of your dairy production. So he developed these discs that actually have a material that he put in there, and you could stack those, and actually through evaporative cooling, you could cool the milk down enough to store it overnight and still be good the next day to sell. So no electricity required. He's gone through a couple iterations of this. He got a USAID grant to improve the design. And, this milk cooler can be used for places where there's just no, at least reliable electricity. He's also done some other things. Anybody heard of argon, like argon oil, which is used in cosmetics? So the way that's typically extracted, mostly in Morocco, is and most of the workforce that does this is women, and they have two stones. They set the argon nut on one stone and they crush it with another stone. So you think slip, right? Cracking your finger or whatever. And so he developed something that would still be relatively low throughput, but it had a long arm and basically a way to squeeze and extract that. And he tried to do it in a culturally relevant way because he didn't want to make something that was super efficient, because in that culture, the men would just come in and take over and then the women would have roles. So he tried to design it in a way that fit within the cultural context, but made it safer, for the individuals that are working in that space. So those are just a couple of examples of what we would say, is more focused on sort of solving a problem that's not about return money to the university. All right, so I wanted to talk a little bit about, we've seen some of the end results. We've got companies, we've got products that have come out. Sort of how do we manage that? What is the role of Innovation Gateway in helping you sort of move that idea forward? So we're divided up into sort of three teams. We've got a life science team, we've got a plant ag tech team, and we got physical sciences engineering. So we have expertise in those areas. So as Dr. Westfelling mentioned, so my PhDs in genetics, my undergrad and master's were actually here at UGA in poultry science. And then I was like, I want to go work more in the human genetics side of things. So I've got a background in that. We've got ag tech folks who have background in plant and other agriculture industries. My colleague Yuan C has got a PhD in nutritional sciences from Cornell. Another colleague who has a PhD in pharmacology and toxicology and worked in industry as well. We've got an engineer, PhD in sort of geophysical chemistry. So we've got some people that can help, but we also have access to consultants and mentors. If we get a disclosure, so when you create something, you submit an invention disclosure to our office. If we get one of those that we don't have the in-house expertise to sort of take it to the next step, we can tap a consultant who can help us understand how does this fit within the market, so we can get you the resources you need to move it forward. And so what we're trying to do is, what is the strategy? Can we protect it? What is the market landscape? Is this solving a problem? What companies might be interested? Who can we talk to about potentially moving this forward? And then we obviously do things like we're doing today, sort of consult and provide hopefully some information that's useful about different types of IP. Oops. So the startup team is really focused on individuals who have an idea for a company. And so they're going to try to help you understand what the market might be and really take it through a customer discovery process. Because what you don't want to do with a startup is put a lot of time, effort, resources into it, create your product, and you figure out nobody cares. Nobody wants the product that you're making. That's the top reason, you know, that startup companies fail is that not enough people care about the product they're making. So if you can answer that question ahead of time, yes, this is a need. This is something that, you know, is going to connect in the business space, then that helps. So we've got access to mentors. We can help you get some initial funding for the company to move it forward. And then well, obviously we have incubator space too. So if you decide to start a company, you can't just work on it in your UGA space. There needs to be a clear separation where you're doing commercial work versus your university. So we have incubator space. We have office space in the Delta Innovation Hub. And that's really, so that's on North Campus. I don't know if anybody was here before this. This building's been up in a couple of years now. It used to be called Business Services Annex. It was painted white on the outside. They put like used and discarded furniture. It was not a pretty building. And inside had all drop ceilings and stuff. So when they're like, this is going to be your new innovation space, we're like, okay, thank you very much, I guess. But it turned out great. So it's got these big barrel ceilings. They open those up. The front part is all for presentation space. Some classes meet in here. We've got a maker space with all kinds of 3D printers, a big drone if you need drone technology, a number of different things. And then the back part of the building has offices for companies. So we've got Red RX, which is out of the kinesiology department. They have a non-invasive way to look at muscle metabolism. So current standard of care is they cut a chunk of muscle out and they can look at your mitochondrial function and other things. So obviously if you can do that with he calls it the early version of the Star Trek tricorder. So you can run it over your leg and look at your blood flow, your mitochondrial function. So that's what they're working on. He's co-founder with two cardiologists here in Athens. Can I recycle this out of the College of Engineering? Jenna Jambeck is one of the founders there. Really, you may have seen some of her work in really documenting the amount of marine debris, plastic waste in the ocean. Dallin Animal Health, so that's a company that wasn't originally based on UGA technology. They knew they were honeybee researchers here at UGA. They moved from California to be part of this innovation ecosystem. And they have gotten approval for the first vaccine for honeybees for a disease called American foul brood. And I mean, I always get questions like, how do you vaccinate a bee? How can you catch it and inject it with a needle? So I asked that same question. So what they do is they actually have it as food, like a candy that the queen eats and then distributes it out to the hive. So that's how that resistance is spread. Because I never could figure out how they were going to vaccinate all those bees. But yes, that's how that works. So we recognized back in 2015 that startup companies were going to be a key driver of moving technologies out of universities. So the traditional route has been somebody comes up with an idea, they submit, you know, their preliminary data, they're getting ready to publish a manuscript. They sort of got an initial proof of concept. We file a patent on that and we find a company that wants to take it forward. That was traditional tech transfer route. But a lot of companies have scaled back their internal research and development. So they don't really have the resources to take those super early stage projects, develop them in-house. So they're looking for more mature projects, ones that are lower risk or have been de-risked to some extent. Investors are the same way. They're not going to invest in early stage technologies that have a high level of risk. So startup company can form and advance that technology down the development pathway. That's not just true at UGA, it's true at most all other universities. So when we started Innovation Gateway, which combined the intellectual property licensing and the startup support team, there were 38 projects in the startup pipeline. And that has grown now this past year to 170 projects. So obviously there's a need there. Those startups have, and you know, in those last few years, raised over $125 million in grants and capital investment to move things forward. We try to find ways to streamline the process. So we developed something called the Georgia Startup License. Because if you're a startup company, you're licensing UGA technology, you need to have a piece of paper that says you have the ability to use that. And that's sort of a no negotiation license on preferred terms. It gives some advantages in terms of the time to start repaying patent costs. There's no upfront fee. You know, it's a lot of stuff that keeps the money in the company to move it forward, not sort of diverting it prematurely. So that's been successful. We've had quite a few companies have signed those licenses. So we talked about some products. Let me give you a couple of examples of successful startup companies. Bob Ivory, who used to be the chair of the genetics department here, had an idea. He's like, how do you make large volumes of protein? Because he was thinking about some of the biologic drugs like EPO and some other things that were coming on the market. How do you sort of make a generic version of a biologic? And so the idea that they finally hit on was, think about the chicken egg. So the egg white is essentially pure protein. And the chickens crank those out, right? So you've got a good laying hen, it's cranking an egg every day. So what if you could tap into the power of the chicken, which is good for me as a poultry science major back in the day, right? So really resonated with me. He was actually one of my professors when I was here in doing my master's program. And I was away at postdoc, PhD industry, and came back, and it was cool to see sort of what he was doing in the interim. But anyway, they developed a whole suite of technologies to create transgenic chickens, which would produce a human protein secreted in the egg white. You could purify the protein from the egg white. That is your drug in this case. And so he formed Avogenics to do that. That was initially, they were thinking they would make all kinds of different proteins, but their business model evolved, which is pretty common, into focusing on rare diseases. And the disease, their lead indication was a disease called lysosomal acid lipase deficiency. And it's an ultra rare disease. There's not that many patients, but in the severe form, the average age of death is 4 months of age. So you've got infants who are missing this key enzyme, and it is fatal, and there is no treatment for it. And so they developed a way to produce this enzyme, created in the egg white, purified, that's your drug, enzyme replacement therapy. So they were acquired after graduating from our incubator by Alexion, and this is the drug Canuma, which is now on the market. So these patients who had no options now have therapy that they can use. So we did a number game. How many products has come out of UGA? Anybody want to guess how much Alexion paid to acquire Synergiva, the startup company? Yeah, no wrong answers.
30 million.
$30 million. All right. Anybody want to bid higher than that?
$1 billion.
$1 billion. It's higher than that. Anybody want to go higher?
3.5 billion.
Right.
3.5 billion.
3.5? No, it's higher. It's $8.4 billion. So they graduated from our incubator in 2013. They built out 75,000 square feet of space in Bogart, scaled up their production. They had gone all the way through clinical trials, which is pretty rare to have a company that's all the way through phase 3 trials and just awaiting FDA approval. That's where they were. So that's a huge value driver, right? If you talk to pharmaceutical companies, they don't even want to talk to you until you've got something that's in phase 2 clinical trials with proof of concept in humans. They had gone even further, right? They had completed phase 3 trials. They were required for $8.4 billion. They had not only Canuma, but other things in the pipeline. And then shortly thereafter, they got FDA approval. They're approved in Europe, Japan. So university, in its infinite wisdom, had already sold the stock that it had Synergy. But we made some money, but if you're thinking about the university's typical model is as soon as it's liquid, we're going to sell the stock and be done with it. And that's what they did. So they would have made some more money, but nobody has a crystal ball, right? So you can't fault for that. We did get royalty revenue from Canuma sales until the patents run out. So that's the other thing, because it takes a long time to bring a drug to market. Typically, the royalties that the university gets are going to be for a limited amount of time. You got 20 years of patent life. And so we're no longer getting revenue from Canuma, but to me, yeah, it's an eye-popping number, and we like to joke with our new startup companies that this is the target, right? This is the gold standard, That's right. If you're considered a unicorn if you have a valuation above $1 billion. So this is 8 times that. It's pretty incredible, really. So we're not expecting those to come along all the time, but those, this is sort of the biggest hit, if you will. And it's just because in the biomedical realm, the dollar values are just huge. Another one I mentioned, coaching education. So this was an industry collaboration across multiple colleges. So we had professors from education, Franklin Arts and Sciences, vet med, journalism, mass communication, and really they got an NIH grant to really focus on developing tools to help students learn challenging concepts. Their first product was Aussie Osmosis, which is an app. I used to have it on my phone back in the day, but you could move Aussie to like low salt and high salt areas. It would shrink and swell depending on the salt concentration. So it's a visible way to sort of understand that. And they developed some other case studies. And NIH said, hey, y'all need to form a company to move this forward. So they formed Cogent Education. They had about 20 employees. And really we're starting to get some market share in that education space. These are some of the different tools that they developed, and they were then acquired by Explore Learning, which I think has been acquired by somebody else. So maybe on like their third round of acquisition. But that's a company that grew out of UGA that was trying to solve a specific problem sort of in that education space. And not only did they develop these case studies, they developed simplest way to think about it is a heat map that a teacher can track all of her students as they're going through these problem solving exercises, and she can see where they're getting stuck. Like, so if there was a majority of them getting stuck sort of at one point in the problem solving exercise, she can pause and say, let's talk about this concept a little more. So she can actually he or she can visually see sort of where the challenges are happening in real time. So let me just mention one other thing that we do as an innovation gateway, and that's our contracts team. So during your research, you might need to exchange materials. You may need data, access to data. You might need a confidentiality agreement to talk to the company about some unpublished work. So those material transfer, confidentiality, data use all run through our office. We're glad to help you. So I know software is a big something y'all think about. So I wanted to kind of pause and talk about IP protection for software. Copyright. So as soon as you create something, as soon as you write code, as soon as you record your video, as soon as you write your masterpiece, symphony, whatever it is, once you put it down, what it's called reducing to a tangible medium of expression, it has copyright protection. It's inherent in that creation. A level of patent application where you've got to file a patent application, send it before the USPTO, they have to decide if it's something's patentable. That's a whole nother level. It's much harder in the software space than it used to be. There's been a few court rulings that have changed sort of what is eligible for patent protection and what's not. I mean, I'm going to give an answer to sound like I'm a lawyer. If I'm not, it depends. So each case is specific. But in general, if you're writing code to do something that a human can do, it's just going to do it 1,000 or 1,000,000 times faster. That's probably not going to be patentable. But if it's part of a larger system, if it's connected somehow to a machine, if there's something that software is doing, then that might move into the realm of patentable. So we'll help you think about how to do that. Other things to consider if you're designing a suite of software, the user interface may be something that has a unique sort of look and feel to it, right? That can be a design patent. It can't be directly tied to the functionality, but it can be something that is protectable, just that design space. Think about, the home button on the iPhone, those sorts of things, right? Those are design patents. It could be a trade secret. If you're starting a company, you don't have to tell the world everything you're doing. You can keep the secret sauce to yourself, right? That may be a competitive advantage. Or like if you think about software, other types of things, a trademark can have real value and recognition, right? Adobe, well, everybody knows what Adobe is, or Microsoft. Those are visible trademark names. And that is something that can have value in the marketplace. Tip Tough, for example, is trademark. Any tip grass is known in the turf industry. That's UGA grass that has market value. And the other thing we'll talk about just briefly is sharing software. So a lot of times we want to do stuff open source. We want to do public release. Cool, we're on board with that. But you need to think about if you're giving a license like under a Creative Commons, are you giving that third-party commercial rights? Because that's really not the role of the researcher to give away commercial rights. That's something that should ideally be done in consultation with Innovation Gateway. So if you're going to make it open source or for academic use, then you want to make sure you're using the right mechanism to do that. So, some examples of creating commons that have non-commercial licenses. Here's just a couple of examples, right? So that would be, you can still make it publicly available, but it can only be legally used by a nonprofit or academic, not a commercial firm. And so we're glad to sort of help give you some guidance on that. The other thing to think about is copyright marking. So, if you're doing the hard work, you'd like to be recognized. So we can help guide you in terms of, this was developed, 2024 at the University of Georgia Research Foundation, which sort of owns the IP that comes out of UGA, and it's under this license. It's this thing. It's created by these people, in this unit at the University of Georgia. So just something to get that out there, get the recognition that you did there. I'll be glad to take any questions on that. Yeah. Just the last couple of things before we pause for questions. So, we try to sort of think back, what are we doing that's working, what's not working, how do we refine that? But since 2015, when we formed Innovation Gateway, we've done over 1,500 licenses with industry. There's now 450 products based on UGA research out there, and about 90 million in revenue, 170 in startup pipeline. And one of the cool things is, if you look at economic impact, and this is primarily due to job creation from the startup companies. The latest calculation, if you remember seeing, the University of Georgia has, I think it's $7.6 billion economic impact. Well, part of that calculation is $531 million from just job creation and other things from the startup, which is pretty cool for our economy. And then, if you'll remember the fill in the blank, UGA was number one in football for a while, but the latest survey from Autumn, which is the Association of University Technology Managers, UGA was number one for a number of new products that reached the market. That's for FY22. We've either been first or second for the last 8 years, which speaks to the research done here, that it's applicable, that it's solving problems, that it's compelling, and the mechanism we have to move that out there. And then we were also number 3 for the number of licenses with industry. So we currently have 1,450 active licenses. So I'll wrap up this section just to say, this is where we want to sort of help you, right? So we don't want you down here fumbling around in the woods trying to understand commercialization. Ideally, you can come up on the roadway, and we're not going to drive the car for you, but we might, help you sort of point you in the right direction. So it's a way to sort of get above, sort of the fray down there and sort of see a path forward and try to bring the right resources to help you move your ideas forward. So before I wrap up, I just want to mention that if you're thinking about sort of moving forward in a career with space, and you think intellectual property might be something you want to learn more about, we have both an internship program, which is a semester long, try to keep it a low time commitment, maybe 4 to 8 hours a week, so you can learn a little bit about tech transfer and intellectual property, sort of get a different perspective. And these are some past interns we've had. We started this in 2009. We've had over 100 either grad students or law externs come through our program. These are a few in the past few years. So we got somebody sort of in business development, somebody working as a medical science liaison, and then a licensing associate in another tech transfer office. And then our postdoc program is relatively new, but Jan, you want to kind of tell your background, and sort of, she was our first postdoctoral fellow. So.
Yeah, I was the lucky one. So back in 2018, so after I finished my PhD program, one thing I know is I don't want to stay in academia writing grants. So that's one thing I don't like. But I don't know actually what I can do. I spent all my time trying to finish my dissertation. I'm exhausted there, so not exploring too much over what is out there potentially. But I was really lucky. My husband got a really good job here. So some of you may know him, Kai Xiong Yi. So he is a professor at the genetics department. And then I was offered this spousal hire position as a postdoc at Innovation Gateway. So I learned everything about tech transfer here with no experience before. And apparently Derek and all other managers in the office have done a really good job. Like, they taught me everything, and I got the hands-on experience, and I really love it. So I think it's the beauty of this is you get to still use your expertise, your training from PhD. You can still use that. All the abilities you gain here, the experience, are still very valuable. at the same time, you get to learn the new things about the business part of it, how to market it, how to commercialize it, and also we get to learn about some legal part of it. We're not the lawyers, but we get to negotiate the business terms of the agreement. So you get to learn how to read those agreements, right? So it was a little bit challenging for me in the beginning, but I feel like it's also very interesting. You get to learn all different things, so you get to play with it. So you never get bored. You always learn new things, like all the great researchers, like here in the university, developing new things at all the times. You don't need to, be part of that hardworking and then just watching how those good things coming out of it. So just enjoy the fruit, I guess. So like that's really the beauty of this job. So and with this postdoc position, so we after I've done the postdoc, we feel like it's really the value of how bridging the gap for the new grads towards tech transfer, right? So we started this 2-year or maybe to 3-year postdoc programs in our office. So we offer this hands-on training with the graduate students. So basically we developed a 2-year program with the first year focus heavily on like the knowledge training and experience training. So we teach you everything and you get to learn things and get to observing how other like licensing managers dealing with like the licensees, dealing with the faculties, how to commercialize things, negotiate agreements. And then after that, graduate students may say like, okay, I'm not interested in this, that's fine. You can expand to other things. Like there are a lot of possibilities out there more than just tech transfer. So we're at intersections of a lot of different pieces. So in this program, we don't want to just limit it to just licensing, but also to other things. You may get exposure to entrepreneurship, like startup program as well. And also maybe for the legal team, like the legal counsel law firms, they do the patent application for you. Maybe you're interested in that, you want to pursue something later, we can connect you with them as well. So I think this is a really great program. So, and we're actually currently hiring a postdoc. So, if you're interested, feel free to like tag us, me or Derek, to learn more about it. And yeah, we're very happy to be here today to introduce more.
We're very fortunate. Yuan's an incredible addition to the office. I mean, she was our first postdoc. She piloted that program, but we had a licensing manager opening. We were so excited that she was willing to stay and work. It's an incredible asset to the team. So thank you for that. She's already talked about some of this. I mean, the things that you learn in your PhD are directly applicable to this, and there's a number of different career options. So on the science side, that could be a licensing manager, technology analyst, at a law firm, R&D consultants. There's lots of different areas that you can go into there. Business side and industry, working in a startup company, business development, interface, alliance management, or engagement leader, depending on the company. And then in a law firm, they have scientific advisors, they have patent agent. You can take the patent bar. You don't have to actually go to law school to take the patent bar. You've got to have a scientific background. And then you learn basically how the patent system works. So we have had grad students who took the patent bar when they were finishing their PhD and then went to work as patent agents. We've also had some who went back and got a law degree after they finished their PhD. So that's it. Please, if you have an idea you're kicking around or you're getting ready to publish a paper and you're like, hey, I wonder if this has commercial impact, talk to us. We're glad to chat about that. If you've got questions about careers, things like that, we're glad to talk. There's just a couple of examples of events that are happening. Check them out on our website. But I'm going to pause there. I'm not sure sort of how much time we have left, but 5 whole minutes. Sorry, I thought I was going to leave more time for questions. But, I'm glad to hang around afterwards if you've got questions. So, yeah.
I know that UJ as a whole has only maybe less than 5% international students. I don't remember that number, 3 or 2%. But at grad school, my guess is that around 50% of students are not US citizens. Do you have the capability to offer legal assistance to non-citizens?
So if it's related to intellectual property developed at the university, yeah, certainly. I mean, my right ventures are across the board, depending on their jobs. Is that what you're talking about, or you have a question about something other?
No, international students sometimes are concerned about things many steps before even IP. For example, not losing access to everything they've built. And it's a critical point, entry point for them.
Yeah, I think Office of Global Engagement would probably be a better spot, but we see ourselves as sort of a connector office, so if, whatever challenges you have, we're glad to sort of help point you in the right direction. I don't know that we can help with that particular aspect. I'd say Office of Global Engagement is probably a good spot. Yeah. Other questions? Start with you. Yeah.
Is there like an ethics committee associated with where you work? Like when you're talking to people about wanting to commercialize an output of their research, is there an ethics committee there to evaluate, like, should this person be selling this product?
Yeah, so we're not going to sell the product. So what we're looking at is we want to identify who the inventors were who worked on that project. They're going to have, if it's anything to do with, human data, they'll have had to have IRB approval, saying that data, all that stuff will be covered from our group. And then, what we're trying to understand is what is the intellectual property potential? And is there a partner who can take that forward? So you have more specific sort of aspects about that. I mean, we're not voting anything that, is like unethical.
Right.
More specific sort of.
Like I know that there's already that filter of most research going through an ethics committee, like you mentioned, IRB. I didn't know if there was another committee, another ethics committee as part of that whole process.
Not in a formal way, but I mean, Yuan mentioned we're not attorneys, but we work with general counsel of the Research Foundation, who's looking at the agreements from business, legal perspective, as well as bringing in that lens of making sure that we're not doing anything that's contrary to the mission of the university. And my boss, the vice president for research, is kind of new to that as well. And we as a team are looking at the IP output of I'm glad to talk to you about that. Yeah.
So I know it's really common for small businesses, or as they're getting bigger for like either the business or the product, they kind of hit a wall and it makes sense for them to be acquired, right? So what is kind of the of your incubes from this program, like what's kind of is there a typical latency? Like what's the typical timeline, or does it just vary a lot?
It varies depending on industry sector. So if it's a software company, right, those are going to have the fastest trajectory, and they're, then you're talking, it could be like 6 months to a couple of years. If it's engineering where you're, developing some sort of a widget, for lack of a better term, I mean, that could be like 3 to 5 years. If you're talking biotech, where you're bringing a drug to market, I mean, that is 8 to 15 years. And really what determines what's a great point to sell the company or bring on a partner is sort of what is the expertise that's needed. So you're driving the early scientific part, the proof of concept, you're able to flesh out a business model. But, manufacturing and selling a drug is probably not something that the startup needs to try to build that out, right? They need to partner with a pharma company. That's what they do, right? They take things through regulatory. They have a sales force. They have all the connections with doctors and hospitals. So it wouldn't necessarily make sense to do that. So it's a little bit industry specific. It was, like I said, software, faster, engineering sort of in the middle, and then biotech. Certainly on the therapeutic vaccine side is a longer timeline. Not to say that they would be in the incubator that a full amount of time, but that just gives you a rough sense. We've got 30 companies, I think, that are actively incubating on campus, and others that are elsewhere. We have time.
So one last thing. Give people an idea of the date of when Abigenics started. You know what I mean? Yeah. So they sold big in 2015.
1996. So 19 years. Yeah.
I have one quick follow-up question to that then. Okay. Given how long those timescales are, Does the support does the support continue after suppose you graduate or just leave the university in general?
Yep, so if you're an inventor and you invent something here, then that's never gonna change. So let's say we license it and it's 10 years till that gets, there's products sold and we get royalties. Doesn't matter where you are, you're still gonna get that royalty share. In terms of startups specifically, we try to help companies get to a point where they can scale up and move out and go on their own, and they've got all the resources they need. We're still available to consult, but I mean, hopefully the company maturing and they're bringing in a team, they're building it out, they're getting resources, and then they typically are like, yeah, we remember UGA, but talk to us later, kind of thing. So it's, it really depends on the company and their growth trajectory and what they need from the university. But we want to provide services as long as they're needed, I guess.
Thank you.
Yeah, good.